Hello and welcome to Hoffmann-Photography. My name is Rainer, I'm a photographer and photo instructor. Today's topic are wide-angle lenses and what makes them so truly special. Wide-angle lenses are indeed special. But before I tell you why they are special, let's once again have a look at our table of sensor sizes and focal lengths. Generally, all focal lengths shorter than 50 mm on full-frame cameras are wide-angle lenses. But for the typical visual effect of wide-angle lenses to become noticeable, the focal length should be at least 35 mm. Here are some typical focal lengths for wide-angle prime lenses. But of course, there are a number of wide-angle zoom lenses available, such as 16 to 35 mm, or even more extreme lenses like 14 to 24 mm. But be prepared for hefty prices. Very popular are the 24 to 70 mm lenses that cover focal lengths from moderate wide angle to moderate telephoto. Shorter focal lengths than 14 mm for full-frame cameras, with the exception of fisheye lenses, are uncommon. Now, what makes wide-angle lenses so special? Here's a little experiment you can do at home. Find one of those slide mounts, or if you don't have one, just cut a rectangular hole into a piece of cardboard. Then hold that slide mount at arm's length. Close one eye, and what you see through the hole is a very narrow angle of view corresponding to a telephoto lens. Now, if you hold that slide mount closer to your eyes, the angle of view gets larger and larger, and if you hold the slide mount directly to your eyes, then the angle of view corresponds to that of a normal lens, which is roughly the same angle of view as the human eye. Now, that's the point. There's no way you can simulate a wide-angle lens, a field of view wider than that of the human eye. No way. And that's what makes wide-angle lenses so special. You can't simulate the wider angle of view, and wide-angle lenses see the world in a way that you can't see with your unaided eye. If you don't have a telephoto lens, pay a visit to your favorite dealer and let him show you one. If possible, a lens with a very short focal length, like 16 mm or even 14 mm. And then have a look through the viewfinder. It's breathtaking. And here's how you use a wide-angle lens to good effect. Mostly wide-angle lenses are used to get everything into the frame, like in these examples. Don't get me wrong, that's perfectly okay. If you can't get far enough away from your subject, then using a wide-angle lens to capture your subject completely is the way to go. These pictures were taken with a 16 mm lens on a full-frame camera. But they don't look like they were taken with a wide-angle lens. They could have been taken with a normal lens or even with a moderate telephoto lens. Now look at this image. Again, this image was taken with a 16 mm lens. But what a difference. This is a typical effect of a wide-angle lens. Objects in the foreground, like the flower bed, appear much larger than they actually are, and objects in the background, like the building, appear very small. This gives the image a very strong perspective and optical depth. The same is true for this image of a wheelbarrow and a cottage in the background. Here is how it's done. Find yourself an interesting foreground object, like the rocks in this image. Then get so close to it that it almost fills the frame. But make sure that the view of objects in the background is not blocked by the foreground object. Tilt the camera down so the horizon lies in the upper third of the image. Now your image has a good optical depth with a foreground, a middle ground and a background. Here's another example of this technique. This gorge looks like the Grand Canyon, but it's just about wide enough that a walking boot could get stuck in it. Let's look at a making of image. That's how the scene really looks like. Note how far the camera is tilted downward. But thanks to the very wide angle of view, the rock on the left is completely within the view of the camera. And here's the result again. This way of using a wide-angle lens is sometimes called the classic landscape technique, but it can of course be used for other subjects like this gondola in Venice. There's a lot more to say about the classic landscape technique, but I cover that in another video. What about the maximum aperture of wide-angle lenses? Well, in images like this, you usually want complete depth of field. A blurred foreground would be unsatisfactory, to put it mildly. Therefore, most of the time you will use f8, f11 or even f16 for a complete depth of field. And therefore, the maximum aperture of wide-angle lenses is not important. A lens with a maximum aperture of f4 is fine and it will do its job nicely. And it's much cheaper than a lens with a maximum aperture of f2.8. Okay, that's it for today. As always, thanks for watching.